finally, it's the image of him as a shepherd. We can't come up with character attributes that are abstractions and leave the image of the shepherd behind entirely. We can't come up with, well, what makes for a good father? And say, well, these are God's attributes. And leave the image of the Father behind. The image has to stay with us. And because, again, as Lewis would say, there's something about the shape of reality that requires, and he even goes so far as to say requires myth. And when he talks about myth, he talks about things that have such a kind of overbearing and mysterious conveyance of reality that there's no way we could reduce them. I think Lord of the Rings, one of the great virtues of Lord of the Rings is that it's modern myth. It's more like mythology than it is like a novel. And all of the imagery that's there and all of the structure of the narrative has an amazing power, Tolkien built into it. And it conveys things in ways. It's not just that it's more interesting or more fun, and therefore you get the moral of the story. It's conveying something about the nature of reality in a way that's the best way, better than, again, the kind of bullet-pointed.
So we probably get a little too utilitarian in the approach to try to understand.
Partly utilitarian, that would be part of it, but also partly, again, an assumption that the best way to moral knowledge. I mean, I don't mind being utilitarian if we mean by that we want a good road to living well. We want something that is useful to living well. I don't mind that. But the question is, what actually shapes our own moral imaginations? What shapes what can convey wisdom? What will make us wise? What will make us wise? And is wisdom just having all the algorithms of abstract principles? That is, here we have all the law. See, it intrigues me that the Bible has law and it has wisdom. Is wisdom just a matter of being able to apply all the laws right all the time? And then we could figure out a computer program that can do that for us. Or does wisdom go beyond just the sheer application of law and, again, require a kind of intuition? I've known really wise people. And they're not engineers. I mean, they're more like artists than engineers, okay? I've known pastors who you can talk, in fact, I've known some pastors who were really scary, in that you could talk to them for 3 minutes and they'd know pretty much everything that was wrong with your life. You felt naked. And now it could have been a spiritual gift, but it was certainly a kind of discernment and wisdom. And they were perceiving things that I don't think were algorithmically reducible. And see, so that's part of what I want to get. Again, there's a way of knowing. And again, we disparage when you said we're worried about being utilitarian. I think what you had in mind there, that we disparage this as a way of knowing because, as I'm going to say tomorrow, we don't think it's objective. We don't think it's subjective. Well, again, it's partly circular. We don't think it's objective because we don't think goodness is objective. I mean, that's where that idea came. We don't think that truth, goodness, and beauty are followed. But so yeah, I'll cover more of this tomorrow. It's a long answer to one question.
I apologize.
No. I hope it was fruitful. I felt it was, but I'm the one doing all the talking.
And maybe I should, if anybody else has a question, because my question is essentially the same as Gary's.
Okay.
Except, I'm going to ask it a little differently and say, you look at kind of creation, and you say that tells us about kind of moral reality. How much does creation tell us about that, and how much does the fact that we're created in God's image do that? And how do you separate creation from the fact that we're created in His image?
Well, see, I don't want to just say that it's not just creation in isolation. Okay, it's our and I want to include the Holy Spirit and the work of providence in there too. I don't want to exclude it. I don't want to just say that if a Martian came here and you know, or someone from some alternative space-time continuum observed it all, they'd see everything that Solomon saw. And in fact, bringing Solomon back in the discussion is good. You start with the fear of the Lord. Okay, so there's a disposition. There's a disposition. There is a nature. So, and that's a big theme in Lewis. And again, a big theme in Lewis because it's a big theme in the tradition that he represents. That our being rational creatures doesn't just mean that we can present good arguments, but our being rational creatures means that we can be in sync with the rationality of creation. And by rationality, again, I mean follow its order. That we have been created to perceive the order that's there. Now, part of the effect of the fall is that we distort the order that's there, or we deny the order that's there, and that's again another Romans 1 reality. We suppress the truth in unrighteousness. But Paul's presupposition seems to be that it's not because we have an original incapacity. It's because of the fact that sin is ruling us in some way. Although, footnote, we're not 100% consistently depraved. I believe in total depravity, but I don't believe in absolutely thorough depravity, because I believe that God can overcome our sinfulness and overcome sinfulness in many, many people to accomplish his purposes. He overcomes that inability to perceive appropriately in people's lives all the time, who are not necessarily regenerate people. So there's not a one-to-one correspondence between the work of the Spirit in salvation and the ability to perceive moral order. There are a lot of Christians who are really morally stupid, and there are a lot of pagans who have been given some kind of moral wisdom. I still think it's a gift of God. That's, again, I follow Calvin on here, that any gift anyone has is something from God, and it is a gift to be able to perceive that. But the native ability, back to your original point, there is a capacity there, and that's part of what the tradition meant by describing our rationality. Again, we had the capacity to resonantly perceive creation. Resonant. Yeah, we resonate. We vibrate.
Correspond.
Yeah, and that's being created in the image of God. That means we have the capacity to respond to it. I'd say first, we're created first of all in the image of God, who is love, and we have the capacity for love. We have other capacities, but the ability to perceive and to know those things is definitely part of the capacity. And then, but again, we don't do this as individuals in isolation either, and that's why communities and cultures are important. And again, historically, the church has always believed, as is taught in the Old Testament, that each generation trains the next. It tries to convey and pass on its accumulated wisdom to the next generation. And so part of raising our children is so they don't have to start off on square one in trying to perceive and recognize these things. They're given a boost from the beginning by virtue of passing on this repository that God has entrusted. Did you want to ask me?
Well, just another linguistic way of putting it is, in people that we've read a lot, is instead of morality or whatever being an invention of the human mind, it is much more a recognition in what is there.
Right.
It's recognizing in it what resonates.
Right. And see, I would say that it's precisely that universal nature that's one of the things that accounts for this universal ethical testimony that he says there. It's not just because, and I'm glad you raised this, it's not